Hi, I'm Mike Sibley, leader of the James Moore Manufacturing team. On this episode of More on Manufacturing, we're joined by Ernie Richardson, co-owner of Teaching Lean Inc. Ernie has 25 years of manufacturing and human resource management experience, including Toyota Motor Manufacturing. He is also the co-author of the Toyota Engagement Equation. On today's episode, we'll be discussing lean for the manufacturer, what it means, how it's incorporated into leadership and culture, and how to get started. So, Ernie, welcome. I really appreciate you having you on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of jump into it because I know, as we were talking beforehand, I work with a lot of manufacturers. You've worked in a lot of manufacturing settings, and everybody kind of, we use this term lean, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But from your perspective and from your experience, let's kind of get us all on the same page. How do you define lean and what it means to be lean for a manufacturer?
Yeah, and so I'm going to answer that with two key points. And the first key point is talking about the company. When we talk about lean, it's they're looking for continuous improvement every single day. And in the book, we talk about everybody engaged every day means that we want, as a lean leader, we need to be able to engage people to be able to improve their work areas every single day. And so that's a huge, important piece. And it's a big step for a lot of companies, particularly if the company's used to firefighting. It really goes in the face of firefighting. When we talk about having standardization, having key performance indicators, and then being able to measure a difference. And the second piece, and probably more important piece, is it's continuous development of people. We always tell companies when they're asking the secret to lean, what is the secret sauce, and we say it's continuous development of people. And at Toyota, we always talked about that we're a company that develops people, just happens to build cars. And so it's those two are really huge in the aspect, and for some reason they're big challenges for companies. Standardization, as you know, is huge, and being able to measure KPIs. And so, like when we go into a company, the first thing I'll ask them sometimes is, "Do you have enough people?" And almost 100% of them will say, "Well, no, we don't have enough people. We can't get enough people." And I'll say, "Well, how?" And it leads into the standardization, telling us how much man hours we actually need, and sometimes for companies when we talk about it.
So you mentioned that's kind of a really it's funny. I'm sure you've seen it too, but in my experience, you've seen cultures and leadership that really embrace this idea of continuous improvement, work towards it every day, measure it, train people on it, becomes part of what they do. And you can see it on the walls. You can see it in talking to the people. You can see it in how they measure their systems. But then I've seen companies where they say, yeah, we're doing lean, and you've got somebody out on a floor somewhere who's trying to do some stuff, but it doesn't cross what I call the admin line. So there's that point where the production facility ends and the administrative side of things begins, and it doesn't really cross that point. So they don't really measure it. They don't really get involved in it. So, to me, that leadership and then that culture is a huge thing. Can you talk a little bit more about really the idea of leaders accepting, and what does that mean? Because I feel like sometimes they say it, but they don't necessarily mean it. So how do you talk to leadership about really supporting it?
Yeah, we first, when we talk with companies and get the opportunity to visit companies and work with them, the first thing we talk about is culture. We can say, we can throw all these tools out there all you want, but the reality of it is if we don't have a culture in the company to be able to accept the tool, then it'll be just it'll be a flavor of the week, so to speak. We spend a lot of time talking about with executives about what are you going to change? Many times what we hear is, well, we're doing lean and they're doing it down there. But the reality of it is everybody in the organization has to do something different, and the leaders have to be patient and be coaches to be able to protect it every single day. And so, we spend a lot of time with the leaders, and we'll go to the floor with them and actually say, tell us what you do, and explain to them the culture impact they have just going to the Gemba or going to the place where the work has been done, and how much impact they can have just by their comments, just by their body language, and negative or positively,
Mhm.
right? So it can be very negative that they go down in their firefighting and they teach people to firefight. Then good luck trying to put lean in
Mhm.
place. But I think the biggest thing and what we try to really coach companies is this is not a one-time event. This is consistently the way we should be doing
Mhm.
business. And it's a big transformation for a lot of companies, and sometimes they have a really difficult time understanding that. So, like for an example, A3 problem
Mhm.
solving, great tool,
Mhm.
but you have to have the be able to support it, and then you have to be as leaders, you have to use that as the tool that we're going to manage the company
Mhm.
with, and sometimes that's a struggle. And I talk about cross-functional for a moment. I spent half of my career at Toyota in human resources. And the reality of it is, it's really difficult for manufacturing to be able to implement these programs without having the support of the non
Mhm.
manufacturing groups. Matter of fact, our policies, procedures need to be looked at in order to be able to support this goal that we're looking for.
Mhm.
And so it's all in. I mean, it's all in from the top all the way to the bottom. And so I think that's what a lot of companies, they're trying to look for this magic thing to happen, and then change, and then we can go back to normal.
Right.
And the reality of it is, that's not the way it is. It has to be every single day engaged with.
Well, and some of the problems that you know, some of the things you kind of see though, as you try to build it in the culture is, you know, and I'm sure you've seen this too, but you got employees who say, okay, here's the flavor of the month. You've got that. Okay, here
Yeah,
we go. We're going to try this thing. Then, or it's the employee that is afraid. Hey, if I'm going to make improvements and reduce waste, they're not going to need me anymore. As opposed to
yeah,
turning around and saying, no, in fact, if we can, we'll be able to have you do more, learn more, you become more valuable. But
yeah,
oftentimes, it's looking, you get this negative view, so to speak, of saying, oh no, if they do this, I'm going to lose my job. Or, so how do you start building lean into the culture and overcome some of these things?
yeah. And so I think that's a really good point. And I always say it's really difficult to get people to make improvements to get rid of
Mhm.
themselves, right?
Right.
And so what we explain to people is we want to eliminate processes and make the whole process more streamlined,
Mhm.
but we don't want to. We want, if we have extra people because we have processes, we'll use them to develop something else in the organization or not hire the next person.
Mhm.
So all are really key. But I'll go back to, if we don't have standardization in place, it's really difficult to understand what we're improving.
Mhm.
And Mr. Ono, who's the father of TPS, or Total Production System, says without standards there can be no Kaizen or
Mhm.
no improvements. And so many times it becomes people's opinion about whether we're making an improvement or not,
Right.
and people's opinion about what the value the employee is giving the company. And so until we get standardization in place, but I will tell you, if in fact the objective for the company is to get rid of people, or the minute you reduce a process is, okay, we're going to lay off a person, don't even worry about trying lean, because it'll be an epic
Mhm.
failure.
Mhm.
And so it really deteriorates the culture. The idea is we want them to find seconds every single day to make improvements, and then stack that up at some point to be able to eliminate a process, or increase the value of the process. We never want to get it in a situation where we're getting rid of people.
Right.
And so if concept, then it's really a tough one to. It makes the whole lean concept a failure.
Yeah, I've talked to, I've worked with clients in the past on as they begin going down this road. One of the things I've always recommended is, listen, if you have to get rid of anybody, if there's somebody you were planning on that performance wise or whatever, do it before you even go down this road. If you have to do it, don't do it after you've made a bunch of improvements and people can see the long-term benefit here, that hey, we're cutting waste, because then nobody's going to want to do anything efficiently, or you're going to find people who are already out there looking for jobs because they're worried their job is next. It doesn't
Okay.
make sense to go that route.
And I think here, the other big mistake that companies make is they try to go full blown lean tomorrow. And the reality of it is, there's sequential steps to being able to make improvements, and it starts with standardization. It starts with KPIs, key performance indicators. Then we can start talking about leading and lagging indicators. Is the process managing us, or are we managing the process? Those kind of things to help us get in a position where we can start seeing the long-term benefit and employees buy into it. Because right now you think when they start out, they don't trust them. They don't trust, typically the employee doesn't trust the leadership to say, you've got my best interest at heart. Right. And so we have to build that trust over some period of time using standardization and being able to KPIs and all those things to be able to help them. Because really what we want in lean is self-directed work groups, right? We want them to be able to do their own thing without leaders having to be involved. You got the standards, you got the KPIs. You don't need anybody coming down telling you what to do because you already know. And that's really the objective that we try to get companies to.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned, started going down the road of, what are some things that you see companies go wrong? Maybe you can give us a couple other examples. But I had one manufacturer I was touring. This was a few years ago, and leadership gave the operations team, manager, the team, the ability to make changes on the plant floor. And they really did this outstanding job. They were talking about how they were getting things through faster and all the different things that they measured just from an operational standpoint. So I asked the question, okay, from a costing standpoint, from a financial standpoint, how much of an impact does this have? Because it was really phenomenal work. And they said it hasn't had any financial impact. I said, what do you mean? You're getting product out the door faster. We went through there's got to be an impact. He's like, well, they're allowing us to kind of do our thing over here, but we don't get access to any of the financial reports or impacts. And the leadership doesn't. So to me, there's something that went wrong in there. They were able to measure some stuff, but they weren't really able to measure really the total impact. And to me, that just seems like the wrong approach of really embracing lean and trying to implement and move it forward.
Absolutely. And think about the whole purpose of all of it is to increase the value, right? And in value means long-term profitability for the company, to be able to say we want the company to be sustainable and to be able to adapt to the future, to be able to have new product, et cetera, et cetera. And we can't do that without making profit, and we can't do that without making profit continuously improving. And so it goes back to the question about if we make improvements but we can't see the value in it, is it really improvement? And shame on us if we're going to roll out a big incentive program to be able to get people involved in lean, but then as soon as it's over with, we go back to the normal process because it is the flavor of the month. And so here's the unique thing, I think, Mike, about this whole concept. Employees will do what they're expected to do. It's usually the leaders who are not being able to be disciplined enough to be able to keep it long term, and including the financial side and aspect of saying sometimes we make change and we can predict it's going to cost a little more now, but it's going to save us a lot in the future. And what I tell companies, if you can't explain that, then good luck with that. But you got to be able to explain it using the standardization and the KPIs to be able to say, here's how we're going to have a bigger impact long term. But if we're not increasing the value, then I have to question why are we even doing it. You talk about your example. If you went and talked to the team members, they're going to look at it and say, this lean thing is kind of crazy. It's like, they just done a bunch of stuff, but we're still making the same amount of profit. So the return on investment didn't come out too good for that scenario, did it?
Yeah, and they have no idea. My just using experience, I'm thinking they've got to have made an impact. Otherwise, leadership, the owners of the business are not going to allow you to just keep spending money and spending time on something if there's not an improvement in even if they don't support it, or they don't, or they're letting you just do your thing. They're not going to let you do your thing to the detriment of profits.
That's exactly.
So, so in my mind, there had to be some financial improvement, but I think, you're missing something if you can't allow for the openness to really show that impact and then say, okay, well, then how can we do it better? That's right. Okay, we've made some improvements. Can we make some bigger improvements? And I think it's kind of motivating to the team when they see that they're having this kind of impact.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to engaging the team members, right? So we, in my experience, and I've been fortunate to see a lot of companies since I left Toyota in 2013, and Tracy and I do consulting work now, but had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with a lot of companies, and almost every time that we go in and we engage the team, you can see light bulbs go off. And then I'll go back sometime later, and if they've got a strong leadership team, you can see that light bulb is continuing to go off. Mm-hmm. But many times we go back and they go back to business as normal, and the team member come up and say, well, the only time we make changes is when you're here. And so, it's not sustainable, but my experience in Toyota and after is team members will engage if you'll allow them to do that. We as leaders sometimes don't feel comfortable with allowing people to do that. And that's a huge culture shift, especially if you're a firefighter. If you got promoted because you're a firefighter and you're up in the organization because you're a firefighter, then it's really difficult to make that transition of saying, no, I'm going to engage someone else to learn and take the learn, so we won't be fighting all these fires all the time.
Right. Well, and I always talk about it, the people doing the work are the experts. And we use, team-oriented problem solving and let the team figure out where the solutions are. Because they know it best. They know where the waste is. They know where the time is being spent. And I think sometimes as leaders, it's just a matter of supporting, holding accountable, giving the information, training, all those kind of things are important, but it's also kind of getting out of the way and letting them do what they need to do.
We talk about culture. We say, you get people to come into your company because of money. That's how you get them there. You get them to stay because of challenge and development. Money won't keep them, but challenge and development will. And so there's, I always tell people, when I worked at Toyota and I started at Toyota, it didn't pay a lot of money, but I felt like I wanted to be part of this thing that was going on. It was something really special. So the money was important, but it wasn't the most important thing at that point in time for me in my career.
Yeah, sure. And, I wish I could remember the speaker said this wasn't me who said it, but they said once you take money off the table, culture trumps everything.
That's right.
And I do agree with that. And I've had some clients tell me recently where people have left and come back for a little bit less money, even because the culture of the place they went was just not great. And I think people are looking. Yes, they need to make a decent wage, whatever that means, and things like that. So the money is important, but I think culture is also extremely important. And I think initiatives like this, doing the flavor of the month things, can be more frustrating than it can be beneficial at the end of the day.
Definitely hurt the culture tremendously. And I go back to, as much as we engage people and we see them making those improvements, guess what? The profit goes up. So now I have the ability to pay more if I need to. Right. So it's kind of hand in hand. And I do believe that people need to have ownership in the company to feel, hey, if I help the company save $100, somewhere down the line, $5 that's going to come back to me. Whether it be in bonuses or whatever it is, but have that vested interest in making sure that you want to be part of this success for this company. And I think that's really, really huge to be able to allow team members to make that connection.
Exactly. But I do think, though, that obviously these things take a little bit of time. So you don't go from, hey, let's make this change right now, to instant bottom line, success. Although you might hit some early successes, and often, that's probably the case. Some of this stuff takes some time to let it vet out through, though.
And it's development of the people too, right? Like we go back to, I keep bringing up standardization. Standardization gives us the foundation to understand how to make improvements. But the second thing it does, it allows team members to one-on-one understand, am I doing what I'm expected to do? Part of that is now I encourage you to improve the standard. And then we go back to the key performance indicators. So now I've got the standard in place. Can I do what I'm expected to do? And now am I getting the results I'm expecting to get? And so then I'm engaging them to be able to control those two aspects of it. And it does take time. It takes, when we go into a place and they don't have good standardization, we tell them, don't try to go in and standardize everything tomorrow.
Right.
One process that's your biggest headache, and let's standardize that one first and get a key performance indicator for that one. Then we'll go on to the, and then we'll go on to the next one, and we'll go on to the next one, and do as many as the culture in that company will allow at that time. And most times early on, it's only one or two to start with, and then gradually build up. But it's a journey. It's not a destination. I mean, it's literally. I tell people I started at Toyota in 1988. I worked on culture, and now we're 2013. I'm still working on culture. It's not something that's, you just do it and it's finished. It's something that we have to continually to work on every single day.
Sure.
And don't get frustrated, because the reality of it is when we start putting standards in place and KPIs, we're going to see a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to change the thinking from problems are a bad thing to problems are a good thing. Mm-hmm. Problems are, and we always said job security equals problem solved.
Right.
Means that we have to look at problems to say, if I find it here, I won't see it. Mm-hmm. And find all of them here and develop the standards and the KPIs to show those problems. Mm-hmm. So problems are a friend. That's a real hard culture shift for a lot of companies going, oh my God, we got plenty of friends, right?
Right. Yeah. There might be some that more problems than they know what to do with. So, one of the things we talk a lot about on this program is increasing the value of the business. And part of that, when we start talking about one of the drivers of value is efficient processes, structured processes, the standardization you're talking about. So so for a manufacturer who's maybe tried to go down this road before or hasn't gone down this road before, what are a couple little tips that you might have to kind of get them started pushing the right direction?
Yeah, I'd say, the leaders need to understand the concepts first. So they need training and development in what does a lean culture mean. And then even in standardization, even though they're not going to be doing the standards on the process floor, they need to understand how to support that. And so they need to have a really good working knowledge of what standardization means and what it's going to do to the company and long term, and then get right into the key performance indicators. So we always tell them, try to find one leading indicator. And the leading indicator tells us how the process is doing, not the result of the end of the financials, at that point, because it's too late to change anything then, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So we want to get at the process. So we're asking them to really think of, from a leadership perspective, of what's my leadership standardized work to be able to support this change. And it is the biggest gap that we see in a lot of companies, because the leaders sometimes feel like they don't need to change. Mm-hmm. I'm good here, but in order to make this transformation, it doesn't mean you have to do everything, but it means you have to understand how to support things like standardization, like KPIs, and like the culture and all those aspects. So, just from an implementation perspective, try to look at what's my biggest problem right now, and how can I incorporate standardization and KPIs into being able to help that problem, and development of people. You're developing the people to do it. You always want to get to the lowest level of organization to develop the standard to start with, because as you said, the people doing the work are experts. Mm-hmm. So let's use them to be able to define what should be happening, and then make improvements from that aspect of it.
Great advice. So, one I mentioned, you're co-author with your wife with a book. Maybe tell us a little bit about what, if somebody picks up the book, what are they gonna read about?
It's really 25 of experience, and it goes back and forth with me, between Tracy and I. She talks in the first part of the book. She talks about the hiring process and what it means to hire the right people, and then how to go through it, and what was the development of a new person coming in, and then what was the development of them through the organization through the next several years. The second half of the book, and we actually have a case study in there that we kind of play along with people to be able to try to relate it to what they do. Mm-hmm. Second book gets into the leadership side to talk about what do leaders need to do, what's the leader's roles and responsibilities, what's the leader's learning every day, and helps be able to look at the overall focus to say, from a team member coming in to a leader that's developing that person, what is both of their roles. So it's kind of like our 25-year journey. Mm-hmm. So and it's been received really well. We've got really good feedback, and it's really, we never intended to write the book for money. That wasn't the intention. Was to leave kind of a legacy of something that was special that happened. Is to kind of give people an overview of, this is what it was like to be in the shoes of the people who were actually there. And so actually, if you go to the Toyota EE, thetoyotaee.com, people can download the chapter 11 for free and be able to get a taste of what it's like.
Well, great. Well, and given the state of labor these days, employees, the great resignation, and now even to some degree, the great regret of people wishing they didn't leave and everything else, right now, people development, there's probably hiring the right people. There's probably nothing more important in many manufacturers, and even outside of manufacturing, there's probably nothing more important than that. So I'm sure some really, really great advice in there that, people can pull from. So appreciate you talking about that. So Ernie, we've been able to hit on a lot in a very short amount of time. Like you said before, we could spend the next week probably going through each of these topics. I really appreciate you being on with us today.
No problem, not at all. I appreciate the time.
And for our listeners, I appreciate you listening. I hope you pulled some nuggets out of it. And of course, if anytime you have questions or want to talk more, you can always reach out to me, or you can reach out to Ernie as well, who's always happy to talk about this stuff. So thanks, everyone, and hope you have a great day.
See you guys.
To learn more about James Moore & Company's manufacturing services, go to jmco.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our More on Manufacturing series to receive updates when new videos and podcasts are released. If you'd like to be a guest, or if there's a topic you'd like to see covered on a future episode, contact us on our website. You can also follow us on social media for more news as the landscape on manufacturing continues to rapidly evolve.